Maintenance of login is one of the primary tasks using NAB Easy Security. We allow to create groups of permission sets, and you can of course also assign permission sets directly. One of the things we can do is add expiry to a single access control for a user, and we can also use that manually to actually remove existing permissions when testing something new. I'll be showing also how we create a new user and login, because the normal NAV process is being used for creating a new login or user. We have something called permission as user ID also that can simplify the setup of many users at the same time. When you're implementing Easy Security, you probably want to replace existing security, and there's some functions that allow that quite easily, both to replace and also update the existing permissions in there. I'm inside the Easy Security in here, and I can see I have a list of the logins in here. NAV refer to people as users. We refer to them as login, and that makes it easy to distinguish between the two screens that you're actually looking at in here. I have a new user, and based on all the calculations out here, I'll see that there is no access for this user currently out here. But I'll go in and I'll go ahead and add permissions in here. We can add group or permission sets, and I'll actually select a group in here initially in here. We can also, as we build groups in here, I have some down here that are based on the normal NAV permission sets. We also have some that can be imported as demo data based on the one we create, and even some groups that are actually for the quick security in here, allowing login, object access, and the data access in here, for example. But I want to go here and actually assign the group sales to John in here. One of the things we also can do with these groups is actually combine them. So as you have a lower level group, you can combine those groups into the higher level access for the users in here. But initially, I want to assign this group sales in here. As I add the group sales, if I actually tab out of this one, it wants me to confirm that I really want to use a blank company, because that's quite a powerful permission in here. First of all, it will give access to the Easy Security company, but the other thing is any future company would actually be added in here. So at this case, I actually want to select a company group in here. Same way as we do for permission sets, we also create group of companies. And I have one down here that are called operations that currently is containing 2 of the companies inside the database. Using groups like this one allow you to actually, even for the North America one, for example, have a different company name underneath. So it could be in your test environment, you rename the company to Tests January 2017, North America, for example, and things like that one. But you will be able to use the same security assignment in here. But I'll be using this operations in here. One of the real reasons for using the same security assignment is that we can of course export and import anything in our application, allowing you to basically set up security in your test environment and then export it. The companies of course can be totally different based on the grouping in here. As I now update this login, I would actually calculate the amount of data I would normally be maintaining in here. We can also assign temporary permission. So if John actually needs to be the operation manager in here, in the North America company, I can assign the permission, but I can also pick a date when this permission is not active any longer. And based on my demo license here, I don't allow a date, so I have to pick something way out in the future in here. So the 1st of November would actually work in here. As the 1st of November will come around, we won't delete this line in here. We would actually just, after you publish or update the login, check this box that is called no permissions in here. We will do the same for individual lines also in here. So it's not just Expiry that are using the no permission. We could manually check the no permission on all the old security, and then as we test out the new one, and if it didn't work out well, we can simply remove the no permission and the user would get the old permissions back again in here. It's also possible to copy from a different login and things like that one as you create a new user. It makes a setup quite a lot simpler. The same functionality about no permission and expiry date is actually available on the user also. So if I wanted to take all John's permissions away temporarily, I could just check the no permission and do a publish, and it would actually remove John's permissions in here. But I have assigned all these permissions to John in here, and basically that's how you would do it in here. One of the other things about the permission groups is if you're actually using quick security, we built kind of a permission group of the basic ones. So I could go in here and say I want a new group in here, and that will be my customer service. I want to base my initial permissions in here because that's what I want to do for initial setup, basically on my quick security. So now I include a group, and then I will go add the additional functions in here. So for example, I want all my customer service to actually run the navigate function. I could have limited the access to that with our object level security that is part of the quick security. But basically now I allow customer service to have this additional permission in here also. As I maybe in the future would actually improve my security to be very, very precise, I could switch this group, gaining the basic access to something else, and I could add the additional permission needed for customer service in here. But basing the initial allow you a quite easy way of actually later on updating it by having groups inside the grouping in here. Another option to set up users is actually to have permission as a user ID. And if I go in here and look at Lisa, for example, I have set up Lisa to be like Susan in here. And that basically means I can't assign any permissions directly to Lisa, but as I would change Susan, Lisa, of course, would get those other permissions in here. Creating new users inside Easy Security is not one of the things you would do. You would actually use a normal NAV security screen in here. So I will go into users, and as I look at this one, I can now create a new user in here. And I have a user that is actually created in the Active Directory, that is Sarah, and I can add this user in here. If I initially assign some permissions, we actually going to pull those ones in here. And I would just, as an example, add Sarah as a super user in here. The grouping in 2016 and 17 and later on is not used within the context of Easy Security. So our groups are more powerful, and you should not set up any groups underneath the login in here. So I can now see Sarah as part of the list in here. If you actually want to use the permission as a user ID, you can always create a user in here. And I'll actually just call it customer service. And as I close this one, NAV will complain that it's not set up or anything. And that actually means that user will not be able to log in any way because it needs a service tier and password and many other things. But I'll be able to use this customer service now as something I assign to people with permission as, for example. So I have added 2 logins in here. As I go back to our list, it's not in here. We work offline, both changing data, but also retrieving data in here. So I'll use this function to get new logins from live, and it will basically pull in the new users and allow me to set them up in here. So at this point, I can see I got my 2 logins added, and one of them actually had some security already. And that was, of course, Sarah, because I assigned the super permission. I'm going to make all these lines with no permission. And I will then add a group down here, and I can just go ahead and add the sales, for example, in here. And I'll add it in my operation companies. So at that point, I now can update the login, and I'll be able to see all the information we calculate, like what functions can people run inside the accounting system in here, and in which companies, of course, they can do it in here. The other thing is, if I go look at my user customer service in here, I could go ahead and assign this sales also, and in my operation companies, and instead of having Lisa being like another user, because that user could potentially stop, I can actually go ahead and add it with customer service in here. So now I get something that is meaningful, not necessarily just another username in here. I could even make Susan now, instead of having these permissions. I could go ahead and delete all this. Oops, not the value, but delete the row. And make Susan also, of course, be like customer service in here. All these changes I have done now, I want to go ahead and do a publish of permission. This one will now push the data back to the normal NAV security tables, and it actually do quite a lot of calculations also. One of the things it's do right now is calculating expiry. So if my new permissions I added to John was expired based on the date, this one would be the process that actually will remove that permissions from John out there. We also calculate the permission set as part of this process in here, so everything basically stays updated. Now it's recalculating the users. We will create restore points, and it actually allows us in a very easy way to roll back the previous permission. So if you have done changes and it's for some reason didn't work out well, you don't have to go assign super to people so they can do their work. You can just roll back the previous permission quite easily that way. But my users has now been published, all my changes. And if we actually look at what we call live, we will see a list of the users in here. And one of them would actually be, for example, Sarah down here. In all the RTC versions of NAV, you would actually have the changelog activated on all the security tables, or on the 4 security tables. So I can actually see a changelog of who created Sarah, what time it happened, and everything else in here. The other thing is, if I actually go and look at my changelog entries for the access controls, I also know all those things that happened in here. Even the one where I assigned super temporarily in here, and I can see as part of the publish, we actually deleted it. Maybe somebody went in and assigned this one, even directly in the SQL database, and you wouldn't see the insert, but you would for sure see the delete when it was removed from the user in here, as we did the publish from Easy Security. If I go back to the login, one of the other things we can do is actually, after I have installed Easy Security, I actually maybe want to update a lot of users using, for example, Quick Security in here. So I now selected 5 users in the system that I know should just have the regular Quick Security access to work inside NAV in here. So I will use this function up here to add access control to the selected one. I want to add a group because I have one of these Quick Security groups down here containing the 3 permission sets necessary. As I select that group, I don't want to add it for all companies, so I actually want to say no to this, and I want to select it for my operations down here. And then I want to replace all the existing permission sets. Basically anything the user currently have, I want to replace with these permissions in here. So I now had 4 access controls that needs to be added, and anything the user currently have is going to be set with no permissions in here. So if I look at John, for example, that I actually was modifying earlier, I would see his current permission is marked with no permission, and now I only have my group with the quick security. I can then go in and say, yeah, actually John and Sarah needs to do another function in here, and I don't want to add a permission group. I want to go and add my navigate. And I don't want to add it for all companies. So I want to add it only for the North America company. And I don't want to replace all the existing permissions. So at this point, I will only add 2 of them. And until I confirm that last message, nothing have actually changed in here. So if I now look at John, I will see that the navigate added in North America, but it left the existing permissions that are basically replaced in here. This one allows quite a simple way of modifying many users at the same time in here. There is also a function, and even if you have all the permissions correctly set in here, I can look at Tim, for example, in here and say he's a super in all companies. There is a function in here to actually copy selected to a company group, so you can actually replace the permissions in here. And one of the best ways of doing that one is actually not to do it from here, but do a drill down in the access controls. And you can now change the filter in here. So I'll look at all logins, and I won't look at this one, but I'll look where the company group is actually blank in here. So I can now see the users that has blank company groups in here. And basically I can go in and for this one with the blank company group, I can use this function. Oops, I'm on the wrong screen in here. I shouldn't do the lookup. I should select the access controls in here. It's a copy selected to another one. I do the same filter for the blank company in here. And we probably don't want to copy the Sarah one, but I can see in here that this one in here, I want to copy that to a company group. And I want to copy it to operations. And again, it asks if I really want to do it. And then, of course, I can go here and delete that access in here. If I look at everything in here, I would see there's now one for super and for super with the company operations in here. So that makes it quite a simple process to actually move all existing security into a company group. And you probably want to have a company group where I actually have 3 companies. Maybe you want to have one that is just called all companies. And you can then select all the companies in here that are not an easy security company in here. So I would probably have assigned that to my user instead of the operations, for example, in here. But these functions to maintain logins create it quite simple to actually do large changes in your security, and also to get a lot of overview of what people actually can do in here.